Hello, Judy.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
It's so good to see you again.
I'm excited about today. This is
I
going to
am too. We're going into uncharted waters. So
uh-huh.
anything could possibly happen, and maybe will.
Right.
Uh, just to bring everyone up to date, Dr. Judi Bloom and I was lucky enough to interview her, I guess, about 5 weeks ago. Is that right? And we got a lot of feedback saying that there was a chemistry between the two of us, which I like. And so we've come together to create this show called Creativity in the Age of COVID. And our goal each month is, twice a month, we're going to come to you every other Thursday. And our goal is to bring artists in the theater together, talk about various subjects, and we'll all just do a roundtable discussion on what's working for us, what's not working for us. I will come from the artist point of view, and Dr. Bloom will come from a therapeutic view. Anything you want to say before we bring our guest on?
Well, I just think that it's important for people to know that we're going to be looking at all the arts, not just theater, music, painting, whatever, all kinds of arts, writing, So it's really for everyone and their creative spirit. So even if you're not technically an artist, it's really about tapping into your own creativity and using that, and even seeing some of the benefits that are coming out of having to deal with COVID. So it's not all negatives. So I think that's important for us to explore as well, and hopefully we'll do a little bit of that today.
Now, before we bring our guest on, I want to let everybody know that this is an interactive show. So if you want to come on the air and speak to anyone on our panel, or Dr. Bloom, myself, or any of our panelists, now's your chance to do so. What you need to do, however, is to send me a private message, and I will send you the link that will allow you to come into our studio. Now, if you come on, please keep everything brief so that we can keep things moving, and please be very succinct with what you have to say.
Right.
Thank you. So now it's time to introduce one of our first guests, and this is Bob Hoffman. Hello, Bob.
Hello there, Richard. How are you?
Well, great.
Hi, Dr. Bloom.
Dr. Bloom.
This will be the first time. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Now, Bob worked with Broadway Inbound. He's been with the Schubert organization for over 25 years. Is that right, Bob?
Well, I've been working in this side of the industry for over 25 years. I've been with the Schubert organization now for 15 years.
And what exactly does I know you're vice president, but what exactly does that mean?
Well, I run a division that is called Broadway Inbound on behalf of the Schubert organization. And what we do is focus on wholesale distribution programs for all of Broadway. So we're looking at how to work with the shows in order to promote Broadway and the individual shows to potential travelers all throughout the world. So we work people from China to Europe to South America, and companies locally as well. So we're creating a network that helps to sell the product, and then we utilize that network to also do promotions. Sometimes they're virtual promotions and sometimes they're live promotions. So it's a combination of sales and marketing, distribution throughout the world.
So Bob, how have you been particularly challenged by COVID, and how have you pivoted in today's world?
Well, it's a big challenge because Broadway's been closed since March, so you're looking at no product, and which is what is the meat of what we do. We're selling the shows that these people are creating. So talk about creativity, finding creative ways of selling, and engaging people from all different cultures around the world. So when this all came in, the show's closing. Is one aspect of it, but then you also look at the fact that travelers can't come into New York. So even when we are ready to open, how do we bring them back, and when do you bring them back? So how do we pivot? Pivoting is keeping things warm in some ways. When you think about how do you social keep people engaged, what do you say to these clientele? So we have like Expedia. If you were to buy a ticket on Expedia to a Broadway show right now, that comes through the network that we work with. So how do you keep audiences that might work with Expedia sort of involved in such a way with our creative product that they're there and ready to go with us? The distribution network, as well as the visitors themselves once we're able to bring them back. So how to do that, preparing for the unknown and prepping for all that has been what we've been doing.
Now, Bob, I've been reading that some theaters, especially in London right now, are starting to reopen again. Is your organization involved in any of those aspects right now?
Well, not in the London theaters because we don't own anything. The Schubert organization owns 17 Broadway theaters now and 6 off-Broadway theaters. All of the preparation work from us, as well as across the board, from the Nederlander organization, from the Broadway League, from the Jujamson organization, is what do we need to do in order to change so that we can open and that we're ready to. There's no definitive answers on it yet. And just to say that things keep changing with this, with COVID, and things keep changing with what we're going to need to do. But this is a big endeavor. It's talking about how do you protect the audience? How do you protect the actors on stage? How do you protect all of the creative talent that is working backstage and keep everyone healthy, but also keep that spirit of the live performance. So yeah, there have been some things, and that's what the work has been from the Schubert organization. There has been some things going on in London. Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber, I think, is remarkable with all the things that he has put out online for all of us during this time, but also his commitment to making sure that his shows in particular and his theaters come back are really terrific. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that has started in London. Nothing's happened on the West End yet. In the same way that we see things happening regionally here a little bit in small different types of productions, but nothing has happened on Broadway yet. And I'm looking forward to when that's going to happen.
I know in London, one of the things they're doing is Sleepless in Seattle. And the way they're doing that is masks for the audience. They've only
My friend Ken Billington is the lighting designer for that.
Right.
Lighting designer.
A third of the seats are sold. They keep romantic leads apart until the end. They test the actors daily. So these are, the kinds of pivots I think that are happening. And, in other areas, they're also selling, live streaming. So that's another revenue source, right? And it also makes it more accessible to a lot more people.
Now, is that an aspect?
Yeah, I think there's some of the live streaming.
But is that an aspect the Schubert organization is looking into, Bob?
Well, in some ways. I mean, I don't like when you think of selling streaming, there's been a lot of live streaming that has been going on. We at Schubert organization, we've actually now opened Schubert Studios, which is one of the spaces that is at New World Stages, and it is set up to do live streaming broadcast, but really looking at all live as opposed to everything being via Zoom. That studio's had its first, it was interestingly enough, was set up initially for events, but probably the most interest that they have gotten so far, rather than the corporate events that they were really thinking about initially, is from creative teams, people who want to do concerts out of there, they want to do readings out there, they want to do stage plays, and how do you then do that with the restrictions that we have? So yeah, a little bit. I mean, we're not producing, at this point, we'll be probably producing some things out of there, but mostly renting it for it. But building the studio itself is giving us that capability. I'm looking at how to use it from what I was talking about earlier. How can we utilize that space in order to engage our audiences, but also keeping it live? And so I'm actually working on something now that I'm hoping to do in there in November that will do that. But yeah, so we're working on it from that perspective. And it started, and I think it's growing, and the studios themselves are getting a lot of work. So I think that's good.
Terrific.
That's great. Yeah. Now I'd like to bring on our next guest, and that's Nancy Soleil. And Nancy is a jazz singer, and the industry has changed a lot. It's changed a lot because of COVID, but it changed even prior to this. And Nancy took a career change as well, and she started doing costuming. But she's also writing a book, which is why I wanted her to be here today. She's writing a book on how to get booked on cruise ships. But this chapter that we're living in right now, Nancy, I don't think you had any idea how to write this chapter.
No, I've had to. It's really good that the moment the book is digital, so I can always add things, which is really helpful because things are changing on a daily basis. I mean, who the heck knows when things are going to start up again? So I took this opportunity. It was kind of a blessing in many ways to be able to be in one place with Wi-Fi for a really long time, to be able to do some research and do some writing and finally get off the ground something that I started a long time ago, just to come up with answers to all the questions that everybody kept asking me about being, how do you do this crazy life working on a cruise ship? And how do you get the gigs? That's a big question, because it's a life of adventure, for anybody who wants to give it a shot. So I've answered all the questions I wish I'd known when I started. So,
well, let me ask you this: what did your calendar look like prior to everything just coming to a complete stop?
Well, let's see. I got off my last ship on February 16th. I was set to leave on one on the 1st of March for a week, and then go to another one directly for 3 weeks. Then a turnaround. I was going to go directly from Florida to New Orleans to take another one in the Gulf, and then go to Europe. I was supposed to be in Venice this week. So yeah, it's everything was just came to a screeching halt, and so
I'm wondering how you're feeling going forward about working on cruise ships. Since there were the outbreaks on the cruise ships, what your own thoughts and fears, and and how you're dealing with those.
It is an interesting arrangement because it's like living on an airplane in a lot of ways. You're living in recirculated air, but at least unlike a plane, you can go outside. So it's been a really good chance for the ships to do a massive sanitization. All of them. That's what all the crews, there are still ships, all the ships still have crews, and they're out there with skeletons just floating around trying to keep things moving while they're waiting for things to get cleaned up. And that's what they're doing, is sanitizing from top to bottom. Yeah. So there are ships that are going out of Europe. There are some out of Germany that are going just to, up to the Norwegian fjords, and they come back and they don't stop anywhere. They just float around and maybe get out the kayaks.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I've read that a lot of these ships are not actually even docking, that they've got kayaks and, life rafts and things to get people to and from the ships.
Yeah, they're not porting anywhere. Although if they stay in the same country, there are some in Italy that are going from one port to another, and staying within their own country, and they're okay. But it's slowly starting to open up. They're testing everybody massively, and have not had any problems so far. It's it'll be tough, but so many people are just trying to get back to sailing. Guests and crew as well, because for musicians, the ships hire about 900 musicians a year, and it's a lot of people out of work.
Now, I was hearing a lot about COVID-19 on the ships before we were even hearing about it on land. When were you first aware that COVID-19 even existed?
I had already left, so I didn't really hear about it until early March. I had escaped everything, whatever might have been. I was not on a cruise ship that had any issues, so we never had any problem. Some of the companies had more problems than others, but it depends on the clientele in a lot of ways, where they were coming from, and whether or not they had not started testing beforehand. There's always a questionnaire, you fill it out, but of course everybody says yes, I'm fine. So it's hard to believe all of that necessarily, but I wasn't aware of it until I got back. And I have friends who were marooned. There were fellow musicians from Jamaica that took them about 3 months to get home because their country shut down. The company was trying to get them home, but the country wouldn't let them in. So, but they did everything they could to make it happen and get everybody back as quickly as they could. Some people didn't want to leave, so they felt safer on the ship.
Well, in our business, a lot of people that go to the theater, they're not thinking or even aware of the entire village that are working behind the scenes. And that's the costumers, and that's the stage hands, and that's all of the people that are doing all the work backstage to make the theater come to life each night. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Scott Westerville to join us today. Scott is in charge of wardrobe. He's the wardrobe supervisor for Hamilton. He's worked on the Hedwig and the A Great Itch. And he also recently worked on the new revival, the film version of West Side Story with Steven Spielberg. So welcome, Scott.
Hi.
Thank you. So you were in Los Angeles, if I remember correctly, when you got the word to fly back home.
I was actually. It was March 12th, and we were supposed to open for our first preview. So we had been through the whole production process, and that was supposed to be our first preview the evening of the 12th. And they informed us that morning that it was canceled. So I flew home on 6 a.m. on Friday the 13th, and I've been home since.
And do you have you had discussions with anyone on the precautions that will actually take place in the wardrobe department, for example, when theaters resume again? There's been so many conversations about all of that and what the masks that are going to be needed and the sanitization that's going to be needed and what protocols are going into fittings and all of that. So I know the costume design union is, getting all those protocols into place too about the fitting rooms and how many people can be in a fitting room and what all of that entails and how often we need to be tested. And it's as many of you well know, the space is such a commodity in New York, and the backstage area is so small that it's going to be very interesting to see how things need to change to accommodate all of that.
Do you think they'll do less costuming and fewer costume changes? How do you think it's going to affect the day-to-day?
I'm not sure. It'll be very interesting to see how it affects shows like Hamilton that are already established and running, as well as Phantom of the Opera, which I worked on for many years, and there's so many costume changes, and the costumes are so large and elaborate in that. Aladdin has multiple quick changes, and it'll be interesting to see how moving forward and all of that is handled.
There's some dog in the background who's a little angry right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me try to mute this for a minute.
He's probably upset about all of this. But how many cast members are there in Hamilton, and how many crew members are there approximately backstage?
Well, I have myself and my assistant
Robbie.
And a full-time laundry person, and then there's 8 dressers.
Toby, please.
Bob, you're not muted, Bob. I don't think he can hear us. Sorry about that. It's live theater.
And there's multiple stage managers as well as crew backstage, and like I said, it's very confined. So there are a lot of quick changes that happen in the wings on Hamilton directly out of the sight line of the audience because they're so quick.
Now, I want to remind everyone that if you have any questions or anything for anyone on our panel, you can either post them here or we can bring you on camera. We've got another guest that will be joining us in a bit. And when he shows up, Judi, I'll let you introduce him. It turns out last night that we've got a mutual friend here. How is everything being preserved and taken care of right now, Scott, with this long waiting period happening?
Well, it's interesting. Since we have 7 companies of Hamilton at the moment. One of our tours is in Canada, and it's in a theater, and it's been there since the day they closed down up there. So they have security there, but no one else has been inside the theater. So in LA, everything is wrapped in plastic, and everything has been covered in sheeting, and the same with Broadway. My fabulous crew and assistants took care of everything while I was away, and I went back into the theater, and it's all wrapped in plastic, and the HVAC systems are all running and operating, and they're all, keeping it as dust-free as possible, and so all the theaters are trying to, remain temperature controlled.
And of course, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It'll also be interesting to see, because so many contracts were up or about to be up, and so many people have left the city. So it'll be interesting to see when we do come back, who of the performers actually make it back into the show as well.
Now, that's one aspect that none of us have really thought about. Maybe you have, Bob and Scott, more so. But when we are ready to resume. We all know that there's a long rehearsal process. They may have to go through the audition process again. How are those guidelines being put in place for theaters to reopen and come back?
Scott, do you want to? I mean, I think it's happening from show to show. I think there's not anything that is happening across the board for Broadway or off Broadway. It's that every show is working with it, and every show is going to have a different set of criteria they're going to have to go through. A musical is going to take a lot longer to, sort of restage in some ways and sort of to reopen than a play. So yeah, I think each one of the producers have been working on that. As Scott was saying, I mean, they're working on sort of what they need to do to maintain what they have inside of the theaters right now, and then really thinking through how do you keep your cast, how do you keep your company engaged, and then what do you need to do to bring it back. And some of them it's going to take a lot. There's no question.
The other thing about
feel safe too. I mean, I think that's also a really big piece of this is getting those audiences back, as Bob, you're focused on. How to really make people feel like they're coming back and it's going to be safe to sit in a theater for a couple of hours. What do we do? How do we do that? And during the breaks, going to the bathroom with all these people and all that stuff. How do we do that?
Well, that's where a lot of it comes from communication. I think it's how are you communicating to the audience, that they are safe and secure when they come back in. And I think that you have, what I'm hearing is that you have one group of people who are ready. They're just ready. As soon as we are, that we're open again, they're going to be back and they're going to be very excited to be in the theaters, maybe a little, questioning or cautious to begin with, but they're really excited and ready to come back. But for the bulk of our audience, I think it's going to be a communication with them to make them start to feel right. And it's not just feeling right in the space itself, and as you said, an intermission, but also getting into the theater. I mean, you think about 44th and 45th Street and the crowds and people coming out of the restaurants and all of that. And how do we handle that? Very carefully. Absolutely. And I think it's one of the reasons why you're seeing it take longer, not only because the government is requiring that we're not really there yet in what we can do to open, but in making sure that everyone is feeling comfortable as they come back. And I think you'll see some changes, whether it's masks. I mean, there's a lot of conversation and none of it is definite yet, but Scott mentioned HVAC and that they've been changing all of HVAC in the theaters and the filtering systems and looking at how they're doing, how, no touch ticketing, how are you going to do that? The entrances are going to be a little bit different. There's going to be a lot of changes, but I think you're exactly right. We need to make sure people feel comfortable, and a lot of it is communicating what we have done and what we are doing in order to make the theaters ready for them to return.
Now, I'm hearing that there's going to be a rollout, that some theaters will open at 7, some 7:30, some at 8 o'clock, and some maybe even at 8:30, just, for crowd control in the theater district. Have either of you heard anything about that?
I have not, but it sounds very interesting.
I have. It's not, again, just like everything else that's going to happen inside of the theaters, it's not definite yet. Right. But I think particularly, as I mentioned, 44th and 45th Street, I think you'll probably see a staggered start time for those in those places where the theaters there's more of them in such close proximity. So yeah, I think that's quite possible. I know it's a lot of discussion, but I don't think anything has been resolved yet.
So everyone, make sure you look at your ticket times.
Again, communication. There's more. There's so much communication that's going to have to happen in order to make this all work in the right way.
Scott, I'm wondering if you think they're going to be smaller shows, so there won't be the necessity for all of those costume changes. Are we going to look at reimagining the kinds of shows we're going to do on Broadway?
Yes, I certainly think that could be a direction that we go in, and having so many multiple companies in Hamilton and discussing, the possibility. And as Bob said, it's all just kind of like talk right now, suggestions. But we can't open every company on the same day. So every company needs to go back into production. Every company needs to go back into rehearsal, and everything needs to be. The whole entire show needs to be refit, for all of those multiple companies. So I think we're going to see some big changes as far as sheer volume of costumes and possibly the size of casts. I think we might see. I think we might see more intimate pieces, much more smaller scale, and maybe more plays for a while.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Scott. I think more places.
Very few, just smaller shows and less costumes and simpler, more technology involved sort of things with green screen background kind of things.
Mhm.
They get a little more a little simpler.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking last year about so many of those wonderful shows that came out of the 50s and 60s, like I Do, that two characters. And that because of the way that Broadway has gone in the last 10, 15 years with bigger, those shows have been pushed by the wayside. And maybe this is an opportunity for those shows to come back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I do think you're going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, Scott, I want to ask you, with everything starting to unfold the way that it may be unfolding with all these various productions, and I know that you, God bless you, are in charge of wardrobe for all of these productions. What does that do in terms of your scheduling and traveling? And have those things been thought about?
Yes, and those are all conversations that are being had as well. I just received yesterday emails from Australia because we're supposed to open Sydney in March of next year. So they're still moving forward with it. And a lot of our costume shops in New York are actually building the costumes for Australia as well. A lot of the specialty pieces and our lead tailor, Artur and Taylor, is building all the men's principal clothes. So they're talking about the scheduling of getting them to fly over there, and they have to, quarantine for 2 weeks when they get over there in a hotel, and then stay there for fittings. So some people may be going over there for a couple months to stay there to get fittings done. So it's all just it's also up in the air right now.
And Bob, I have a question for you regarding this. I know that with a lot of the shows with the Schubert organization, there are specific theaters that these shows are booked into. Will that change in terms of, scaling down a little bit, maybe going into a smaller space as to opposed to a larger theater? Or are those guidelines in place for that to happen?
Those guidelines.
If a theater
did we lose Richard there for a second?
Space,
there you go. Richard, I think I lost you there for just a second at the end, but I think what you were asking is whether or not the shows were going to be moving into smaller theaters. Or are you thinking
that's pretty much what I was asking? Yes.
I think that you're not going to see a whole lot of that happen. I think what we were talking about earlier of seeing some smaller shows come in. I have a feeling we're going to be looking at local, regional, national, and then international for where our audiences are coming from. And I think that'll change a little bit of the mix of what is produced on the stages. But I don't think you'll see like a show that was scheduled to, like Phantom of the Opera is not going to move into a smaller theater on Broadway. I think that most of them will stay put. Where they are. It's just a question of what we put into the theaters as they're open.
I have a question, Dr. Bloom. You can take this and run with it. But Scott and Bob, with all of these theaters, and the theater has suffered so much loss since March, being shut down, and the fact that we've even lost some of our members. I know that one of the costumers from Phantom was one of the early casualties, and we've lost so many people. Is there, a support group within these companies with everything that everyone's dealing with right now?
I can only speak to Hamilton, actually, at the moment. I do know that a lot of other crews, like the crew on Hamilton, or the crew on Phantom, does have the wardrobe crew does do Zooms and connect with each other. We actually at Hamilton had a huge multi-company Zoom this afternoon for an hour and a half. So the Hamilton has been really great on facilitating that and keeping people talking and making sure that people aren't feeling too alone. And anyone who is alone, people are really being responsible about reaching out to each other and trying to help and support each other through all of it.
Terrific. And maybe lining up some grief counseling might be something that you want to have just in place for when it's needed.
Absolutely.
I think that's something that would be really important.
And Scott,
they've installed a lot of that with the cruise ships, just because the crew has been on board, for months, and there were some serious issues because people were getting very depressed. They couldn't get home, and they were feeling ill, and it was a problem. So they installed an awful lot of that psychological help to get people through that.
Right.
Well, with Scott, with these Zoom groups that you're having, are there therapists involved as well, or is it just within the company of performers and crew, or are they separate?
It's within the company. We do have, they're creating an HR department for Hamilton. So we have had a number of people speak to us on that behalf. So I think it's they're really rallying behind getting that, making sure that everyone is feeling part of a whole of something, which I think is really important during this time.
And I have a question for all of you, and Dr. Bloom, you can, weigh in on this as well. But if there are support groups that you can recommend for those in the arts right now, whether it be the theater or music or any aspect of the arts, can you mention some of those now?
I'm not specific. I'm not specifically sure about what those groups are. I do know that Actors Equity and the Actors Fund and Broadway Cares are such fantastic resources that we have and are open for everyone in the arts. It's not just about the actors. It's about everyone that is part of the arts community can reach out and get help.
Yeah, and
that's for musicians. They've got Music Cares through the Grammy organization, which is hugely helpful. In fact, I'm donating a portion of my book proceeds to that just to support the effort, because it's musicians need it too.
Yeah, I think we're going to have Janice Friedlander on talking about Broadway Cares and all that, which she's head of. She's very much active in a couple of weeks. Just to really talk about what kinds of resources there are available for people, because I think that's really, really important here. I know there are other things people can, that theater companies are doing. The Public Theater gave $1,000 to virtually all of their people as a way of helping sustain them through this. So I think that theaters are really making their best efforts to try and accommodate in any way they can the incredible amount of strain and stressors that their performers and their employees who are not on stage are facing.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that gets widespread, because there are so many people. I mean, I'm working way behind the scenes at this point, and I can think of whether or not it's the ad agencies or the marketing companies and the other ticketing selling companies and all. There's so many people who have been affected by this and who have been either furloughed or laid off from what their jobs are. And there's not that massive support for that group out there. And it's like there's some organizations that are out there, but again, I said communication earlier. I hope that we are able to share more of this information with people too, because I know that there's a lot of people out there that are suffering and been hurt pretty hard by this, without a doubt.
Yeah. And just the trickle-down effect that we were talking about earlier, that people don't understand the village that it takes to do this. And there's a costume coalition out right now, and then it's all the costume shops and individuals who construct and build costumes specifically for Broadway and film and TV. And it's the ushers at the theater, and it's the cleaning staff at the theater, and the custodians. There's so many, the ticket takers and the people in the box office. There's so many different layers and levels of people who work on these productions that the regular audience member doesn't even see peripherally. They just walk in. They walk in and experience the spectacle.
The costumes and the materials to make the costumes.
Yeah, and a lot of those stores in the garment district have now closed and are relocating out to New Jersey or only doing online shopping. So a lot of the storefronts have closed, as well as the restaurants in the area on Restaurant Road that are doing outdoor dining in the middle of the street. Everyone's just trying to stay.
And right now, I mean, let's face it, everyone, autumn and winter are looming ahead of us, that these restaurants are not even going to be able to sustain their business because they're not going to be able to serve their customers.
Yeah, if they require outdoor seating, we can do that in LA. No problem. But not in New York. I'm a New Yorker. Not in New York.
Not in New York.
Not in December.
We have a special guest in the wings. Dr. Bloom, would you like to introduce him?
Editor, absolutely. Peter, are you there?
I'm there, but I can't seem to get my camera going. Can you hear
And
me?
you look so good today, Peter.
Can you hear me? I've got the camera turned on, so I'm not quite sure what I'm doing wrong. Maybe I should try and sign in again.
Maybe try that, and we'll give you an
Like-
even bigger welcome
I
back.
was going to say, I look a little dark here for Los Angeles in the sunshine, but
If you'll see at the bottom, there's a little circle that says "Leave Studio." Click on that, and then come back. And it may
okay.
make a difference.
Yeah, and I'll clear the browser.
Okay. While we're waiting for him to come back, I want to ask each of you what you are doing to keep your creativity going in your lives now, and if you've created any type of structure in the midst of this crazy world we're living in. Nancy, I'll start with you.
Well, it gave me an opportunity to work on the book, and which was really, honestly, it's been a blessing in many ways. So I've been doing a lot of research and finishing and writing and editing, getting all that done. I decided I'm thinking about learning the French horn just for the learning Spanish, working with Richard on our Artist Way chances, and taking some graphic design because I'm not happy with the website that I have. I want to fix it, so I'll do it myself. I think. So I'm just trying to come up with things I've always wanted to do, and keeping a list constantly of, wow, I think I should learn Italian. Maybe it's like,
Now's the time.
And
I
that's the way
tried Chinese once, and that just kicked my butt. So yeah, I won't go there. Too much.
my dad actually played French horn with the New York Philharmonic.
I just love the sound of the instrument. And you only need one hand. It's like, oh, yes.
So come back in 2 weeks and give us our new introduction. Scott, I know you. Scott is doing a lot of sewing. You can see behind him, and he's also baking a lot. And I've been the recipient of one of his pies, so he's great at that.
Yeah, I'm actually creating this. You can see this caftan that's behind me on the dress form. I'm creating those for friends at the moment, and I'm actually knitting. I just finished a cowl today. Going back to my roots, and actually I've been quilting again. Making these bags that are really fun.
Oh, nice. I like those.
And I will also say, Scott, that Scott has also made masks. We have a few of his masks.
I've been doing a lot of those. Lots of those.
Yeah.
So just trying to stay creative as well as far as creating a structure. No, I have not mastered that. I've mastered sourdough. I have not mastered a structure.
That's the title of your next book.
Good for you.
And Bob?
Well, I guess on the personal level, I've been reading a lot more, which I think has really been very valuable. I read a lot of Buddhist philosophy. I'm a Buddhist, and I've been able to sort of focus a little bit more on how to incorporate that into my work and into my everyday. I've created which I think, so spiritually, I think I've gotten much stronger during this time. And then creatively and from my work, it's how to improve and make us better when we come back. And so I've been, and some of that is focused on technology and changes in technology that we have. Some of it is involved in what I mentioned before, the Schubert studios, and how to use that and incorporate it, and how to make the most positive things come out of what is a really tragic situation. So that's how I've been spending my time, staying as positive as I can, staying in contact with people, and thinking about what we can do in order to make us stronger coming back. Part of that is actually getting back into Times Square. And I'm looking forward to that, because I think that is something from our side, from the Schubert side, that we see as important. And I think we're going to start seeing us getting back into Times Square on a regular basis, which I think is also extremely important to all of us.
I think a lot of Buddhist philosophy is really applicable to what we're going through today. It's about, it's not that we don't suffer, it's we choose to suffer, in essence. It's how we handle the ups and downs of life that matters. Loving kindness, and that's loving kindness towards self and others. So those concepts, I think, are really important for all of us to try and incorporate in our daily lives as we go through this.
Absolutely. What is the struggle about? What is the struggle? What is the struggle about? Why is this here? And what is this here to teach us? And I think that, and why were we brought into this time and to be faced with this challenge, and how we handle it is extremely important. So,
yeah. And a lot of people really, getting in touch with what their true values are, what really matters. And, it's, generally not whether I have, the newest purse. It's whether, it's the relationships in your life and the quality of those relationships, being able to spend more time with loved ones, and strengthen those relationships. So it's, I think all of those things are sort of the positive aspects of what can come out of all this.
Now,
the recognition that we're all essential, not just a few.
Absolutely. That's what I keep saying. We're all essential.
We're all
Now,
we're also not taught. We're really not taught in our culture to self-care or take care of ourselves. So when we actually take the time to do that, we feel guilty about it. So I think that the fact that the world has basically stopped for this infinite amount of time is it is the opportunity for us to go delve deeper into that and to take care of ourselves, because we have to take care of ourselves, because then we have ourselves to take care of everyone else around us.
Exactly. And that we deserve to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Deservability is a huge thing with people, oh, I don't really deserve this. Well, no, yes, you do, you work hard for it, or, or you're doing the best you can. And as you just, pointed out, Scott, yes, you deserve to be taken care of, because then you can be there for the people you love. It's really, I think that there are a lot of lessons that people are hopefully going to come away from this with, that they can hold on to.
Amen.
Going forward.
Now, I promised Peter an even bigger entrance, and I can actually see him in the wings. So, so give him a big ovation as he comes into the room. And there he is.
Hello there. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Jazz hands.
We'll all do that for you. There you go.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's lovely to see Judi, a dear friend from LA, and Richard, it turns out. I think I've probably met you in LA.
Oh,
New
I
York,
think we
I'm
did
sure.
meet Ricky. Yes.
Yeah, because we have all the same friends. And anyway, hi, everybody. And it's been very interesting. I love listening to it so far.
Thank you. Now, for those of you who may not know, and I don't know that anyone would not know, that Peter Colley wrote Cagney, which is a phenomenal show, which was scheduled to go to London for a big opening there. And of course, this happened. We all know the very obvious, but what was your schedule like prior to March 12th?
Actually, it was going really well. So many people, I have shows that play a lot in different countries, so I rely a lot on the international market. And luckily for me, last year was like a really good year. So I asked all my foreign agents, the ones like in Germany and Poland and the Nordic countries and Sweden, whatever, and England, I said, could you not send me any more royalties until January and February of 2020? Because otherwise I'm going to be paying a lot of taxes, and I don't know if 2020 is going to be as good a year as 2019. It's the little game we kind of play. And they all said, fine. And so a whole bunch of stuff came in royalty-wise, and, the shows were still running in January and February, and then of course everything, boom, stopped flat. But luckily I had made a little bit, shunted a bit over, so I was fine for the year. And I'm in much better shape than most of the people I know, like Bobby from Cagney. I mean, he's living in New York. It's expensive.
Yes.
Yeah, Bobby Creighton was the star of Cagney, and he was in Frozen. I mean, Frozen was his gig. He had just re-upped for another year on Frozen. So,
I think, if I'm not mistaken, that Frozen was the first Broadway casualty. Am I correct?
Yes.
It was one of the first shows to shut down completely.
Exactly. So suddenly he went from being a featured role, in a major Disney Broadway thing to nothing, And I think, and I think it's probably a question for Judi, because I mean, how do you handle? I'm actually working with him now, because we're still working on the London possible production. We have a new director who's a Tony Award winner, and he's going to try and take it up to the next level. And so we're all kind of excited, but Bobby's, had to gone through this big move because he needs a cheaper place to stay. So how do I deal with a friend whose life has been far more damaged than mine has? I mean, I own my own house, so everything's cheap. I can, like most writers, I can throttle down to living very small when I have to. Bobby's got 2 kids, family. Boom,
it's a lot tougher. And as a friend, it's being supportive. It's giving him hope. Okay, well, we're getting ready to do Cagney in London. These are things that we can do. So reminding him that life changes all the time. Feelings are temporary; they come and go. Just as the reality of COVID is temporary. It feels like forever, but it's temporary. And really, just being there as a sounding board, reflecting back, reflective listening, I think is really helpful, which is simply reflecting back what you're hearing somebody else say so that they know that you're really hearing them and they feel understood.
Right.
What they need from you. And it may be just a hug, or a virtual hug, right?
Yeah, virtual these days.
That's
Thank God for technology. If we wouldn't be connected at all, if it was back in 1900 and survived.
Right. Reaching out.
I say, imagine this happening 25 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
With everything we have at our disposal right now.
Yeah. I mean, for writers, it's much. Sorry, go ahead.
How many shows did you have on the boards when this happened?
Oh, wow. I had them kind of running in rep in many countries. China, Sweden's actually told me they're starting up again in January. Poland, Germany. I had a couple of shows running in Germany, and China's always doing somebody. It's hard to figure out exactly how many productions they're doing. They tell you we're doing one, and then you kind of hear through the grapevine that it's played in 3 different theaters somewhere else. But so they're doing it. And then there's the usual, I do a lot of work in Canada, of course, because I'm a dual citizen. And I did have a new show we're working on. It wasn't supposed to premiere this summer. It's supposed to workshop this summer, premiere next summer. I just talked to the director this week. We're still workshopping it probably next year. And he thinks because it's not a two-hander, it might have to get shunted over for yet another year. So, to me, it's not a big deal because, like I said, I can hunker down, reduce my expenditures to next to zero for a year or two. But as a writer, it's hell because you're so bored. I'm used to sitting at home, but not for this long. Please, God. I'm used to. It's really boring for writers. You sit at home and you're on your little typewriter, and then suddenly you fly off to a premiere in Warsaw or Norway or some wacko place, and it's all exciting and fun, and then you go home and you sit in front of your screen again. Well, life is the same, but without any of the fun bits. It's like taking out all the premieres and the chance to drink wine and schmooze with actresses and no, life is. I'm just waiting for. I missed it.
We all do.
So imagine the guys that have to go on every night and they get that kick, that excitement every night, or 8 times a week. I mean, those are the people who are really suffering. So that's why I'm looking to help. All the friends I have who are having trouble. I must say, they just started shows up again in Canada. A friend of mine just saw a show at the Aurelia Opera House, which is a 700-seat house.
Wow.
25% full. That's the limit.
Right.
And what they've done is they've got like really good two-hander shows that are like husband and wife team actress, right? So they're already in a bubble.
Right.
And the backstage team stays in their bubble. They don't go anywhere near, the 2 performers. And this particular show has been touring. It was in Aurelia, and I think it's going to a couple of other bigger theaters where they can socially distance. So it's the big experiment. We shall see.
Yeah.
Dr. Bloom, I have a question for you. In the theater, it takes a tremendous amount of discipline for artists to do 8 shows a week. And there's a structure that is very much in place for all of these entertainers and performers. What advice do you give to everyone who doesn't have that kind of structure anymore in their lives. I mean, in terms of being able to keep their spirits up, to get through this, what advice do you offer?
It's really important to have a daily plan, okay? A calendar. And on that calendar, you know, divide it up like you would if you were working, in essence, okay? So I'm going to spend from 10 to, you know, I'm going to get up at 8 o'clock and I'm going to shower and get dressed, you know, start there, right? And then, you know, by 10 o'clock, you know, from 10 to noon, I'm going to do X. Maybe if you're, you know, a performer, it's practicing a monologue, or, you know, just keep your talent up, you know, your skills up. Or if you're a singer, you know, working on a vocal, you know, challenge that you're working on, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Or if you're just, you know, going to do some other creative pursuit, maybe that's what you do from 10 to 12. And then at 12, you break for lunch. And then at 1 o'clock, maybe you do a workout, you go for a walk, you do a yoga class online, you know, to take care of yourself. That's self-care, Scott, that you were referencing earlier. And then, you know, 3 o'clock, it's time to do X, so that your day is planned out for you. It's not just this endless, you know, open, vacant time that I'm going to sit there and, you know, stare at my thumbs, right?
Netflix binging.
So that's important to do. And again, to just constantly, you know, remind yourself that humanity has been through far worse than this, you know, and out the other end, and with a lot less resources than we have now.
That's true.
You know, gratitude for what we do have. It's temporary. We will get through this. You know, hopefully we're at least halfway through it, if not more. You know, but it will pass, and everything does. And being careful not to fortune tell. I don't know about you, but my crystal ball doesn't work very well.
No.
You know, don't worry about what's going to happen. What's going to happen is going to happen. Worrying about it isn't going to change anything. So,
well, as I've said to everyone, I think of each day as its own entity. I've got 24 hours, and what am I going to do in those 24 hours? I can't think. This is not to say that I don't plan, because I certainly do, but I can't be obsessed about what tomorrow's going to hold, or next month, or next year. Because, as you just said, none of us know. Now, believe it or not, we are winding up towards the end of our show. Our first show, Dr. Bloom. So I want to thank all of you who are physically here with us. And I want to thank all of you who are physically in the Ethernet out there watching. Thank you for being here. We're going to be back on the 17th. We are still mulling around ideas for that show. We want to hear your thoughts on the show. What you like about the show, what you don't like about the show, what you would like to see on the show, because we want to do this show for you. This is not just for Dr. Bloom and myself. So let us know what your thoughts are. You can go to my website, which is richardskipper.com. Put your thoughts about today, and we will try to implement as many of those thoughts as we possibly can. Now, before we sign off, I want to go around, and Peter Colley, do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to impart with everyone?
I would say keep the faith, because when my friends went to see that show last weekend up in Canada, and they called me up and they said, oh my God, it was like, it's not quite the same, but it feels like there's a resurgence. It feels like it's a little snowdrop coming up. It's the first shoots of the season coming up through the frosty earth. Theater is like beginning to regrow again, and it might be a little flower right now, but it's on its way to becoming just as big and beautiful as before. We don't know how long it will take, but we know the germs are in the, you know, the seeds are in the earth is fertile, and the future's going to be good.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Peter, maybe you can write a new play about this time, right?
Yes. One of my favorite books at school was The Journal of the Plague Year by Daniel Defoe. Maybe I should do a modern adaptation of it.
There you go.
The musicians are
Bob?
Similar, I guess. Find the benefit, find the positive, and don't let yourself focus on the negative and the trouble that we're in. I keep looking for the benefits and for the positive in everything. And as long as I think we keep that positivity going and we stay strong, I think that we're all ready to come through this. So find the benefit.
Thank you. Scott? And your mic is off. Mike? While he's looking for that, we'll go to you, Nancy.
Okay. I would say look for the opportunities, because there are so many things that might have been you've shoved under the rug for a long time. Get them out and enjoy the things that you've put off for a while, and hone the skills that you have. This is a perfect chance to practice. You know, if anybody wants to go to ships, I got the book for you. So Richard's got the address for. I've given away a free chapter, so he can give you the info. But I just take advantage of every opportunity to grow and enjoy the time you have off. All the times we used to complain of not having time to do this or that, and now we've got it all. Do it, use it, stay positive.
Yeah.
Now, I end all of my shows by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your friends list on Facebook, look at your friends list, go to the third name that pops up, and reach out to that person and give them a phone call. Not a text, not an email. Call them. Tell them I sent you. And just say hello, see how you are. And Scott has come back.
I have. Sorry about that. It's really important that we are kind to ourselves and that we remember to be kind to each other, because we're all struggling and no one's struggle is any more severe or less severe than anyone else's, because we truly can never know what someone else is going through. So just overall kindness.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
What's your favorite phrase, Richard?
What is
We're all
that?
in together. We're all in this together.
We're all in this together.
Yeah.
We're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat.
There we go.
And that's not from me. That's from David Friedman. Credits where it's due. Dr. Bloom, I'm going to give you the final word today. Oh, Bob, sorry.
No, that's fine. I was going to say, and if not, you always have wine, and there's a Broadway wine bar we're just enjoying too. So.
Oh, wow. I'll be in.
Dr. Bloom, I'm going to give you the final word today.
Yeah, just to remember to be kind to yourself, to everyone around you, to know we will get through this. This is temporary, and maybe we can all come out better for it in the end.
Thank you.
Undoubtedly.
Yes.